Right then, guys, bit of a extra one today. It is Bank Holiday Monday, which is public holiday here in the UK, so nearly everyone is off work, and that was my plan too. We had stuff planned. That fell through yesterday, so the missus has decided to do some decorating at home, and I thought, I'm not doing that. So I've come down to the workshop today. To get some stuff done. Now, do you remember in yesterday's video, I said I needed to set aside a good chunk of time to crack on with Ed's custom build. So I've got a whole day today. It's currently 10 past 11 in the morning. So I'm going to see if I can get a good chunk of progress done on Ed's amp. At least figure some stuff out. I've got nothing else to do. I've got no deliveries coming, got no collections because there's no couriers, no post today, no customers are coming in because I'm closed. So I've got pretty much, if I go through till 5 o'clock-ish, 4:30, 5, I've got a good 5-6 hours where I can get some good progress on Ed's amp. So that's what we're going to do. So what actually is it that this custom amp is? Well, Ed is a long-time Cornford amp. I want to say fanatic because he absolutely loves these things. I'm sure he'd just say he's just an enthusiast, but yeah, fanatic, enthusiast, whatever. And one of his favourite amps was the Richie Kotzen Signature, which was the 100-watt head that they did. And he's asked me to build my own version of that amplifier with a few changes for Ed's preference. It was a really cool project. The main one is that we're going for a 50-watt version. So rather than having 4 output valves for 100 watts EL34s, we're going for 50 watts. So just 2 EL34s. And that means I can squeeze everything into the JTM 45 size chassis, so we can have a smaller head cabinet, all that sort of thing. He just wants a single 8 and a single 16 ohm output. We want the on standby off switch that I use on the AngelLister Signature. We still want the foot switchable underboost, and we're keeping the effects loop and things like that. So as some of you have seen before, I've been working on the layout and the design. Now online you can find a schematic for the RK100. Now whenever you find a non-official schematic online, you always have to, you can't take it as gospel. And any designer will know that as you look through certain things, you might see something that's clearly not right or doesn't make sense or is a mistake, anything like that. So you shouldn't copy these things blindly. Obviously, I can't copy this completely because we're doing a 50-watt version, so there are changes that need to be made. But I've certainly gone through, so that's my layout, and looked at each section and worked out where things go and how things work. The power supply is slightly different because it's obviously for 100 watt. The other thing that the original amp had was it had the valve failure LEDs, so when a valve went down, an LED would light up. Ed doesn't want those, so we're not doing those. And what I've done is, rather than copying the Cornford layout where he uses the tag strip and that huge oversized chassis, I'm doing it how I normally build amplifiers, which is on a single board that's going to run the length of the chassis. The chassis is, I think they're 17 inches wide. Yeah. And the board itself is 15.5 inches. So we've only got 3/4 of an inch either side of the chassis for clearance. So it's a lot to squeeze in, but that's how we're going to do it. So I've obviously done a 1:1 scale layout in DIYRC, worked out roughly where things are going to go. We've still got to put on the 8 and 16 ohm sockets on the rear. We need the IEC socket, which has its built-in fuse. for mains. On the front, we're going to have the on, standby, off, and we're also having a dual light as well. So that's how we're going to do that. And I've already, on the chassis, made those markings, and so worked out where they're going to be. I've worked out my spacing, input, foot switch, gain, treble, middle, bass, master presence, dual light, on, standby, off. Obviously, I've marked and drilled out my spacing on here. You've seen me do this on a previous video. I've got to do the rear panel, which is a job for us. And then I can start. Obviously, I've got to make the board up. This isn't the final board design. I have got a later revision that I've done, tweaking things further. And obviously, this one is in mirror image because I was working out spacing on the chassis. But what I want to do today is get the rest of this chassis marked out and drilled. I want to get the valve sockets in. I want to get the can caps in. I want to get the transformers mounted. And then I can start making further progress on this. Yeah, so that's what this amp is. He's having it as a head. It's going to look really cool. And he's been incredibly patient with me because he knows it's a custom build. But I'm really excited to get this thing built. So just working out where I want the rear panel holes to go. So this is the a rear plate from Ainsley Lister Signature. The reason I'm using that is that we already know where these holes are. So it's easy for me when I go to my faceplate maker, I say just use these holes but relabel them. So we're going to keep the 8 and 16 ohm sockets relative to where they are on this one anyway. The only thing I'm going to do is swap them around. So this will be 8 and this will be 16. And for the effects loop, we just need to send and return. So looking at my rough chassis layout, my send is closer to V2 and my return is closer to V1. Well, if we look, here's V1, here's V2. These two holes seem to be perfectly placed. So this one can be send and this one can be return. And that's easy enough. So I know I can tell him just use those two holes and relabel them, and then I can put all of my, because this will be a blank area, we could put my logo maybe, and you know, all of the legal stuff. We can make it look cool. So that's that done. Yeah, so we could have the big Riff logo there, something like that. That marks the edge of the face plate where I want that to be, and then I need to do my EC hole, which will be, I think it's usually 87 millimeters in and then halfway up. Yep, so it is 87 millimeters in as in my center point. The only thing I'm just thinking about this, rather than going at the halfway point, I might shift it slightly up just to give us a bit more clearance for the valve socket and the things here. So maybe if we come up, so this is currently, this is 2.5 inches high, so that's 1.25 inches from either edge. Maybe we go to 1 inch from the top. That might be a nicer position for it. Yep, that feels much nicer. I've still got ample clearance to the top of the chassis anyway, but that extra 1/4 inch will make all the difference. Bank holiday weather update. It is sunny with slight overcast, a couple of clouds, but it is nice and warm and dry. Okay, so chassis is now all drilled. So I'm just going to go over, there's a couple of points that just want to clean up slightly, but it's okay. So at every stage, bit of isopropyl alcohol, bit of bog roll. Just keep this thing clean. So once that's done, I can then re-protect the areas that are going to remain exposed during the build. That's the front panel. It's great. Rear panel. Get all of this nice and clean. And then we can start mounting. So as you can just see, I've just double checked the height of the standoff, which is a 10mm standoff, versus the height of the resistor, because the board is going to sit above this resistor, somewhat like that. Now, the regulations state for a environment-free enclosure, which this is, so that's dust and moisture, up to 1.2 kilovolts. Let me just double check that. So greater than 420 volts and less than 1 kilovolt. Sorry, yeah. So between 420 and 1 kilovolt, your minimum air gap distance between high voltage and chassis has to be 0.8 millimeters. And as I showed you with the measurements there, we're at 1 millimeter, so we are over the minimum gap, so that's absolutely fine. There we go then, that's most of that done. So I've got the 4 preamp sockets in, the 2 output valve sockets, got all my grommets, got my can cap, got my high wattage resistor in place, and if we flip the chassis over, we've got our transformers mounted as well. No choke on this one. But yeah, good progress. I've got a couple more things to do, like my safety earth point. Still got to drill my HT fuse, which is either going to sit here on the side, like I do on the Ainsley Lister, or it will be somewhere in the chassis. But I think because of the size of the board, having it there, like I do on this one, is probably the best way to do it. So yeah, that's coming along really nicely now. So the next step for me will be, let's get the pots in along the front. What else have I forgotten to do? See, I've drilled this hole here. I'm not sure why. I think that's maybe, because that's probably where I put a choke. I wonder if I'd started to drill it for a choke and then realised I didn't actually need it. But yeah, so that's the chassis coming on nicely. I do need to get the board done, but I realised I forgot to get my boards cut down. So I buy them in, they're about 20 inches wide, which is as long as I'd ever need, and I just cut them down lengthways. But they are also 4 inches wide, which is too much. So what I do is I go over to one of the other businesses on the farm here, and he cuts them down to 2.5 inches wide for me, which is my standard width. But because it's public holiday, he's closed, and I can't run over there and get them done. So I can't actually do the board today, which is actually quite frustrating. Right, so onto the build bench. Okay, so first of all, you can see how quickly these chassis fingerprint up. So we'll clean all that up shortly. But I remember what this hole is for. It is for the output transformer wires. As I run them along the top of the chassis, I use a P-clip there, and that's the mounting point for that. It just holds things in place. So I was actually being far cleverer than I gave myself credit for, which is unusual. Anyway, so I'm just going to got my output transformer here, mains transformer here. I'm just going to start working on the routing or the routing, whichever is correct, of the wires. Now, on the output transformer, brown, red and blue are my primary, so they're going to my output valves and my high voltage supply. And these are the output taps. So on this particular unit, black is your common, pink is 4 ohm, yellow is 8 ohm, and grey is 16. Now, I don't need the 4 ohm tap, which is pink. So I am going to cut it short, but I'm going to leave enough that should I need to reattach a wire at some point, I can do so. So let's start with, so these are going to come through this hole here. So first thing we need to do is get a tiny bit of heat shrink just over there. Like that, and then we're going to twist these. So let's go with what do I want? Left hand twist, right hand twist, left hand twist. And then match that up with the black. All the way in. So we've got something like that. And now we get some more heat shrink. Slip that on up to there. We just want to tuck that one in as well, don't we? So we'll go around and in and held in place like that. To there. So they're going to come through that hole there. Now these ones, we're going to have our red, which is our centre tap, through this hole, and the brown and blue through this one. So we'll twist the brown and blue together. And then we'll bring the red in as well. Up to roughly there, where it's going to come off that way, isn't it? Okay. the second bit, and this one we want to line up roughly with where the P-clip's going to go. That looks nice there. So the red can come underneath through the hole. Like that. The brown and blue can continue twisting. Piece about there. That's going to sit there. That comes through there. Maybe about there. Feed those through, and then we'll just get the P-clip in place for that. And there you go. So that's now in place. It's quite loose, but that'll be fine once they've soldered in. It's just to make sure that it doesn't flap about, and then we can run these through here. Although for the time being, I'm going to leave them this side of the chassis, just so they don't get in the way. Power transformer. Remind me, what have we got? So brown and white is the primary, 0 and 240. Red to red is not your high voltage. It's actually a 12 volt winding that we're going to use for the foot switchable boost. Greens are heaters, 6 volt heaters. Purple is your high voltage, purple and purple. Grey is your high voltage sensor tap. Black is your 6 volt sensor tap. So they're all going through there. That's probably going to go through there as well. But our primary is going to have to come around the front and through this here right up to our switch. So that's the next job. Sorry about the lighting, hopefully you can see, but I've got the primary now coming around the transformer, all heat shrink, so it's double insulated now, and through this grommet just there. Perfect. So that's everything I need to do for the time being on this side of the chassis. Spin her over, and I can start. First job I normally do is making connections to my can cap, so I need to work out how I'm going to do those. Okay, so final progress update. I have got the can caps all wired in and sorted. I've still got to connect up my high voltage sensor tap and the high voltage feed, which comes from the on standby off switch. So, but that comes later on. Anyway, I've got my grounds in place, and I've also got my little jumpers done on my preamp sockets. Well, that is all we've got time for. I hope you enjoyed our little bank holiday bonus video, something a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more detail of what's going on and how I build amplifiers. Made good progress on that build today, so really, really happy with that. So please give this video a thumbs up. All your comments and questions down below. We've got Q&A on Wednesday, and I do need some good questions to answer. So if you've thought of anything that hasn't been answered before, please put it in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Our subscriber numbers have kind of plateaued a bit. Even though our viewing figures are good, it's still roughly only 1/3 of you that watch my content are actually subscribers. So if you are tuning into this, I'm incredibly grateful, but please hit that subscribe button, the notification button as well. If you're feeling super generous and you want to support me further, like these guys have, please join the channel. It's only $2.99 a month, and I will catch you all at the next one.